just knows that Corbin will change. But weeks go by. There's no change. Now, Parker doesn't understand how far an addict will go. She doesn't understand their mind. She doesn't understand their thought process. So with the innocence of the child she is, she comes up with a plan to fix everything. Now you heard how she took her uncle's drugs and she flushed them down the toilet. She doesn't understand why her uncle's so angry. She doesn't understand why he grabs her by the shoulders and threatens, "I will kill you." But ladies and gentlemen, Miss Ryder does. She gets her daughter out of that house as soon as physically possible. But Parker's scared. She doesn't understand what's going on. She doesn't understand why she has to leave her family. And when Miss Ryder just tells her that it's not safe with Corbin, Parker's scared. She doesn't want to leave her school. She doesn't want to leave her friends. And despite everything, she doesn't want to leave her family. So on July 14th, Parker waits for her mother to fall asleep. And then she calls Corbin Dallas. Now here's where things get a little bit fuzzy, but what we know is that Corbin Dallas, within less than half an hour, comes to that campground, takes Parker Page off on left front loop, and she ends up dead. Now there might not be enough evidence to convict Corbin Dallas, but there's enough evidence to support this story that makes it impossible to convict Jordan Ryder. Now I want to go through some of the evidence that the state presented you to prove that Jordan Ryder committed this murder beyond reasonable doubt. And I want to go over the first thing. Arguably the most important, the murder weapon. They came up here and told you definitively, this is the murder weapon. I wanted you to think about why they told you that. And Miss Loeb covered it on her closing as well. She told you this because the exact dimensions of this hiking stick, this head right here. But I want you to remember what Dr. Loeb has said. There are many household items that might match this hiking stick, that might have these exact dimensions. And ladies and gentlemen, beyond the fact that there might be matches to this hiking stick and to this diameter, the medical examiner was only provided with 3 objects to examine when determining the murder weapon. All 3 of those objects came from Miss Ryder's tent. But beyond that, the medical examiner never looked at anything from Corbin Dallas's home. The medical examiner never looked at anything from Corbin Dallas's truck. The medical examiner never looked at anything that had any connection to Corbin Dallas. And ladies and gentlemen, that's reasonable doubt. Someone else had a motive, but they didn't look into it. Now I want to talk about the second thing that they mentioned. They mentioned time of death a lot. They actually brought up a timeline that explained it all. But, ladies and gentlemen, their timeline just doesn't make sense. I want you to remember when Dr. Lopez came up here and told you that the time of death was a lot broader than Dr. Quincy said. It wasn't just between 4 to 6 because Dr. Quincy didn't take into account key factors. It was between 4 and 9 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, their timeline states that Parker Page had to die between 4 and 6 p.m., but when they came up on the sand and they crossed Cameron Lee, you heard that he saw Parker Page coming down the trail at 6:30. Now, if that happened, it's impossible that Parker Page died within the constraints of their timeline. That's reasonable doubt. And beyond these evidentiary issues, the conduct of the investigation and the way it was conducted. Now, you'll remember on cross-examination when I asked Detective Chesney a series of questions about what he did and what he didn't investigate. And he answered no to my questions. She answered no to my questions. Ms. Mavrakis, how many times was it?
15.
She answered no to 15 perfectly reasonable questions about what she did and didn't investigate. She didn't investigate Corbin Dallas' death. She didn't ask what his friends' names were that he was with. She didn't ask for receipts. She did nothing to corroborate a potential suspect's alibi. She admitted that on the stand. She said Corbin Dallas was a suspect for this murder. Did you check his alibi? well, no, we had enough evidence to convict Jordan Ryder. So that's what they're charging. They didn't look into another potential suspect. They brought Mr. Ryder to court. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the detective trusted everything that Corbin Dallas said. When Corbin Dallas told them that Parker Page had kidnapped her daughter, which they admitted on the stand that wasn't the case. They took him at his word. When Corbin Dallas told Detective Chesney, I was out drinking with friends all night, they took him at his word. And when Corbin Dallas said that, they didn't even ask if Corbin Dallas had been to Calkins campground. Corbin Dallas made up a story, and the detective believed every single word. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't take away this woman's freedom based on the investigation conducted. You can't take away this woman's freedom based on the evidence presented. And ladies and gentlemen, you most certainly cannot take away this woman's freedom just because the state asks you to. They had to prove every assertion they made beyond a reasonable doubt. Now let's go over some of the things that they just couldn't prove. Time of death. You must presume innocence. The murder weapon and possible others. You must presume innocence. Another possible suspect that was never looked into. You must presume innocence. Ladies and gentlemen, when you go back in that deliberation, you each have the power to make your own decisions. But the only decision that justice allows and this evidence allows is not guilty. Because the state has the wrong suspect and they told you the wrong story. Find Miss Ryder not guilty of aggravated murder.